Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. We're going to be making the sunflower today, and this is a fab project. It's been a while in the making, and it got to sort of 11th hour and I completely changed my mind and redid the whole templates, so they're completely different. The result is an amazing flower. It's but the biggest flower that we currently make, so it's quite the project. What you see in front of you is what you get in the kit, and this is enough to make just one sunflower. There is a purchase option, as always, that you can buy the templates separately, you can buy the kit separately, or you can buy them as a combo. There's also the option to buy a triple combo, so what you'll get is enough materials to make 3 sunflowers, so all of this will be 3 times as much. Okay, so we've got the sunflower yellow, and these labels tell you which part of the flower that it's used for. We've got the sunflower marigold, the green and the brown. Also included, you're going to have some florist tape. You've got pipe cleaners. There are 2 types of wire. The green one is your main 18 gauge, that's the really thick sort of structural wire. And the brown ones are 20 gauge, and I've done them as different colours so they're much easier to identify. In addition to all of the kit materials, the tools and equipment that you're going to need is a pair of wire cutters, a pair of pliers. Most of you will know that I do a lot, especially with the petals, of weights and measures, so for that you may want to consider a pocket scale. I've got a new one, and this little guy I got off of eBay. They're about £5, £6. This one is a little bit smaller than the other one that I had before. It's very, very convenient. If you're going to be waxing your stems to make them realistic, then you're going to need felter's wax, which isn't included in the kit, and obviously you're going to need a wax melter. And finally, we're going to be doing a little bit of ironing. So you will need a steam iron if you want to iron your petals. That's it. So we're going to get on and we're going to make the sunflower. In this section, we're going to make the sort of main yellow circle. The template set comprises of 3 templates. You've got the main circle, the leaf and the petal. The leaf and the petal are 10mm, whereas the circle is 15mm, and there is a specific reason for that, which we will get into a bit later on. So you're going to want to grab your sunflower yellow, and you're going to want to weigh out about 2 grams of that. And I'm not going to get bogged down in the finer points of needle felting. I want to sort of move this tutorial on as much as possible. So basically, pull off a little bit, put the main part down, and just start felting around the outside. Just very, very lightly tacking it to the surface. We don't want much. So just work it all over. Make sure you get right out to those edges. Then lift, put it back in. You could probably use a multi-tool in this. I'm using a, what am I using? 38 star, I think. So it's quite fast felting. So all over. Don't forget that all important lift. And then hold it up to the light. Just check if you've got any thin spots and that's what this is for. Bring this in. Use it to sort of pack out any little bits, and if you've got a fairly even cover, then just incorporate it. Work it over. You want it firmly felted, but you don't want it too solid, because we're going to be attaching petals and things to this. So just go over. You can turn it over if you want. Go back the other way. So you want something that's holding its shape nicely, but not completely solid. And again, nice light grip on the needle. We're not driving into the foam, we're just using the foam to bounce back off of. It's new foam, it's so crunchy. And just work it over until you've got sort of a good flat disc. You're not going to see this, so it hasn't got to be pristine. There we go. 1 2-gram yellow disc, and we're going to leave that exactly as it is. This disc doesn't get ironed, it doesn't get flattened. We want it exactly as it is. The next thing that we need to make are the petals, and there are a lot of these, but you're going to want to do half of them are going to be plain and half of them are going to be shaded. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to make the plain petal, and then I'll show you how to add the shading for the ones that obviously need it. This is 0.3 grams of the sunflower yellow, and again I'm just going to pull off a little bit, pop it into the template, I start with this kind of stalk bit down here. Make sure you get some fibre in there, and then just work around the edges. Tacking it very lightly to our surface just to help hold it in place while we move things around. Just work up into the tip. There we go, first pass. Pop it back in. Check for any thin spots you might have, and then obviously add in the rest of this. Now this kind of stalky bit down here can be a bit fluffy. That's not too bad, but you do want it to have some sort of shape, but you don't need it really firmly felted. We're going to iron this part of the petal, but leave this part for attaching. And just work all over. Turn it over. Sorry, I must remember that when you turn this over, you need to turn the template as well, because it's not a completely symmetrical template. I tried to base them off of real flower shapes. So there we go. It's that quick. There we have it. You can define it a little bit more. Obviously I'm powering through it, but you'll spend a little bit more time on this than I do. And again, you want that firm felted, but not rock solid. Because this part of the petal is going to be ironed. We're going to get that nice thin kind of section to it. And the kicker is you're going to need to make 28 of these. So you've got 14 on the back and 14 on the front. So let me grab the sunflower a second. So you've got 14 at the back here, which aren't shaded, and then you've got 14 at the front that have this sort of shadowing on them. So 28 petals, plain petals, you're going to make, and then we're going to put the shading on 14 of them. Okay, so you will have made 28 of these petals, and then you're going to need to grab 14 of these, so half of them, and your sunflower marigold, which is the very, very bright orange. And to do the shading on the petal, you're just going to pull off a really small bit, and there's really no weight and measure to this, but it's just a small bit. Sort of roll it up a little bit and pop it up the centre, and take your needle and just attach it. In fact, I'm going to move to a slightly more delicate spiral needle. This is a 40 spiral. So just start by giving yourself a centre line up that petal. And then pull off a tiny little bit more. And that's about the staple length of these fibres. So take the middle and put it on the middle there. And then these fibres, or 1/2 of them, come up this way on the edge, and the others come up that way. So let's get a close. I don't know how well this is coming out, but so we put in our main, and then we get our fibres, and we're kind of putting them in that sort of U shape at the bottom. So we've got main stem and this U shape. And just put them a little bit up the side. There. I don't know, hopefully that'll come out. Let me hold it up a little. Let's see, there. So we've got there. And you're going to do this on 14 of your 28 petals. So you've got half that are completely plain and half with this shading. Okay, so at this point you've got an optional extra that you can do. If I bring in the sunflower, if you see around the centre here, we've got these little points that I've made that kind of curl up around the sort of centre dome. And these are entirely optional. They don't really appear on real sunflowers, but I really like them. So I'm going to show you how to make them, and then obviously you can put them in or not, depending on, you know, your vision of this. If you're not doing this, then you probably just want to skip to the ironing part for the petals, but I'm going to show you how to make these little guys. It's 0.1 of a gram of the yellow, and you're just going to use this sort of top. Let's see, here's one that I've got already made, and this is about 20mm and a fluffy bit. So that's the kind of size that you're aiming for. So just put your fibre up into the top part of the petal template and just get that nice point like so. You're going to go all over, pick it up so it doesn't get stuck to the surface. Turn it over. There you go. It's that quick and simple to do them, but you are going to want 14 of these as well if you're going to do that particular sort of additional element. These are going to get ironed as well, so just bring the fibres up, just give yourself a sort of a flat base. There we go. This one's ironed, which is why it looks so neat, but there's these. So 0.1 gram, use about 20mm, 25mm of the template and make 14 of them. So if you've done all of this, you'll now have 14 of these. You'll have 14 plain petals, and you'll have 14 petals that also have the shading on. And now it's time to break out the iron. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to quickly show you how that I iron these petals. You're going to want to iron all of your petals, and if you have these little extra bits, you'll want to iron those as well. But we're not ironing the circle that we made at the start. I've got my iron on hot, and as you can probably hear, it's steaming away. And what I'm going to do is iron this part quite well, but not this part. So pressure and a little wiggle, and that's all that's needed. Don't drive back and forth or side to side, as that will help to sort of distort your petal. So just turn it over, pressure and a little wiggle, turn it over, pressure and a little wiggle, and you can probably see the difference in there we are, the fluffy bit here now to the beautifully thin petal that we've got. Same with these, just leave this sort of little frizzy bit on the bottom, pressure and a wiggle, pressure and a wiggle. There we go. And you can see these are now really wafer thin, beautifully thin petals. At this point, you can come in with a pair of scissors, and I only have these great big ones, and just trim those unruly sort of bits on the sides. So you can just trim them up, give them a really nice shape. Makes those edges lovely and crisp, like so. And once you've done that to all of your petals and your extras, if you're making them, then we're going to start attaching the plain petals to the base. Okay, so you're going to need your base and 14 plain petals that you've just ironed. I'm going to show you how to attach just a few of them. When we attach these petals, we're going to attach the plain ones on this side of the circle and then the shaded ones on the other side, and this is going to give that sort of degree of separation between the petals. So in order to do that, what I recommend, because you've got 14 of them, is they obviously don't fit quite exactly. So what I suggest you do is just lightly tack, and lightly tack, and just go round, because they don't fit exactly on the sort of the 4 quarters with exactly the same number in between. You could do 16 petals if you want, but you won't get this sort of separation that I think really sort of makes it stand out. You're going to want to attach like that, and then once you're happy with the placement, obviously just felt it down firmly. But doing those sort of tacking stabs initially will just help you get everything placed in just the right place so that, you know, you're happy with it. Don't forget, obviously, keep lifting it, because if you're doing that driving motion to attach it, you are going to be driving out the other side. And in true Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier, and that is what you're going to end up with. And as you can see, they're all spaced out, so you've got this gap in between. So 14, and that's the plain petals. Then what we're going to do is turn the whole thing over like so, and attach the sorry, my camera's having a fix, it can't focus. We're going to attach the shaded petals on the front. So grab your shaded petals, and you know, it's very easy. You just put them in between. Again, a few light tacking stabs. Place the next one. And again, just that little degree of overlap with the centre base. So you're starting to work in between, and that will then give you a very nice spray of petals. Okay, so once you've attached all of the petals, then you're going to have something that looks like this. So the plain petals have been put on the back, then the circle's been turned over, and the shaded petals have been put on the front. Next, what we're going to do is make the brown dome centre for the middle. So for that, you're going to need the sunflower brown wool that's included in your kit. You're going to need to grab your pack of brown, and in there you're going to see you've got 2 different colours. You've got the warm brown and the dark brown. And what we're going to do with this is hand blend it. Now this is a 4:1 ratio, so you've got only 3 grams of dark brown and 0.75 grams of the warm. And to those not familiar with hand blending, it's very, very simple. Just lay your fibres out and pull them apart. Stack them on top of each other, pull them apart again. And really what we're doing is just mixing up these colours very roughly. You don't want a nice blend. We want some real sort of blocks of colour to come through. So just mix them up a little bit until you're happy. Just pull them about, little bits here and there, until you've got a good sort of messy integration of the two colours. And we want this very defined separation of colours. You can see me grab the sunflower. You can probably see on that, that's what creates these beautiful kind of swirls in the middle there. So when you've got something that looks messy enough, like so, grab your circle template, and this is a lot of wool to get in here, and we're not trying to felt this flat. We want that nice sort of dome effect. So stuff it all in and just get the edges. Let's change to my 38 star and just go round the inside, just getting everything tucked in. Like so. And what you're going to do now is just work very lightly over and around. You're bringing those fibres in, but you're not flattening them. The way that I would do this is the fibres will go the way that you point your needle. So if you point your needle that way, the fibres are going to go that way. If you point your needle that way, they're going to go that way. So in order to create a dome, as you go across, so up the top you're straight and you come down sort of on this angle. Let me see if I can get a bit of a close-up of what I mean. So we start off on this angle, and then as we go up, our needle's straightening until we're vertical at the top, and then off like that. And by doing that, what you will do is you'll shape the fibres rather than them all going this way. Don't forget, turn, bring it all in around the edges again, and then work it. Same principle, using that sort of arc. You don't want to felt this too heavily at all. What we're looking to aim for is a dome that sits about 15mm high. So it's going to be about the height of this template, and that's why this template is specifically 15mm. So go around the edges, tuck it in, use that sort of arcing motion. And you're just going to keep going like that until the top of these fibres, the top of this dome is sort of down in there. You definitely don't want to drive through. If you drive, you're going to start creating divots. So just nice and light with the needle. I probably wouldn't recommend a multi-tool for this. A little bit of extra work with the single needle, but definitely worth it. A little more control. We're just going to bring it all down. Keep going around. I'm going to go to my 40 spiral now. It's my 38 stars starting to get a little too aggressive. There we go. So we're just going to work it all over, around the outsides. Give it a pat. There. That's a little bit higher than the 15, but that's not going to matter at the moment, because when we attach it, we're going to be pulling all this down in the centre to make that centre divot. So it's a bit puffier at the moment. That's absolutely fine. There we go. One kind of domed circle. I'm just going to tidy up the back a little bit. It doesn't really matter, but pop it back in the circle. Just come in on an angle just to tidy up those edges. And for the moment, that's really all we need to do to that. And as you can see, that hand blending has made us some really nice sort of variated colours throughout what's going to be our dome centre. So that's the dome. We're going to pop that to one side for now, and then the next thing we're going to do is to start creating the green calyx that's going to go on the back. We're moving on to make the calyx now, and this is one of the reasons why the sunflower ended up having a complete makeover, because if you look at the back of a sunflower, the calyx of the sunflower, it's bonkers, and it's almost, let me get it in here, it's almost as intricate and as lovely as the front of the flower, and I really wanted to do it justice. So you're going to start by making a circle like you did with the yellow in the green. It's exactly the same weights and measures. It's 2 grams of the green. Use the circle, felt it all in, and you want this to be quite nice and firm, but again, not rock solid. You want to make sure that you can still attach to it. Put that to one side, and we're going to use exactly the same as the petal weight. It's 0.3 grams, and you're going to make a green petal, and bear with me, all will become clear. So pop it all into the petal shape, exactly the same as the yellow. Work it all over. Get it nicely felted. I will do this as quick as I can, but I need it to be firm enough to show you what happens. When I design these, I try to make them as easy as possible, and where you can reuse certain parts. So that's the first pass. Just going to get it back in. Right, all over. Now, I'm taking this to the point where it's holding a shape, but it's still quite loose. Like so. You can see it's still quite fluffy. Still got some give in it. I'm going to firm it up just a little bit more. Because what we're going to do with this is this one shape is going to provide us with the two parts that we need to create that beautiful calyx on the back. Okay, so I think that will do it. So we've got nice and firm. And what we're going to do is we're not going to iron this all at the moment. What we're going to do is we're going to use this to make these two parts, and that's how we do it. So grab your scissors and you're going to cut it at about 1/3 and 2/3, and just snip it up. And this top third gives you your sort of short stubby bit, and the short stubby bit, for those who like the measurements, is about 30mm, 3 centimeters, which leaves you this. And to turn this bit of stalk into this, we're just going to pull it, just pull it about a little bit and twiddle. And then elongate it. Grab your needle, and I wouldn't suggest using a very fine needle for this, but grab a slightly sturdier needle and just fluff out that end, turn it over, fluff the other side. And these sort of little fluffy bits are going to mean that it's a lot easier to attach to that green circle that we just made. So that's how we make those two parts from that one shape. Now you're going to want to make 12 of these green ones. So make 12 of those and then cut them so that you end up with 12 of the short stubby bits and 12 of the long green bits. To attach the short bits, and again exactly the same as the yellow, we're going to put the short bits on one side, then turn it over and put the long bits on the other. You'll have 12, so the arrangement is basically a clock face. I start by putting the 4/4 in, just giving it that degree of overlap. You lightly tack them in place. Go round, attach the other two, and then fill in, fill in the gaps in between. And you'll find that you'll take 12 to go all the way around. So when you've done that, felt them nice and securely into place, and you will have something that looks a lot like this. Now this still hasn't been ironed. We're not ironing any of these bits yet. Okay, so there's your finished one with the 12. Then you're going to grab the long bits that you made from the other half of the petal, and we're going to attach those on the other side. So we've attached the short ones on this side, turn the whole thing over, and we're going to now attach these long bits on this side. Grab your long bits, and again, it's going to be a clock face arrangement, but you want to sort of put them in the gaps of the other layer. And again, I would start with the 4 directions like this. And what you want to do with these is inset them further in. So here's the edge, and then I'm going to inset it probably by about 1 centimetre, like 10 mil. And I'm just going to get these into place. Bring them over, tack down the back. And these are all driving, so remember to keep lifting, or you can have a very nice green calyx stuck to your foam. Okay, so work around, like I said, bringing them slightly in from the other ones, and then when you've attached the 4 quarters, then go back, add in 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, and work your way around. You can also use the edge of your template, your circle template. Obviously this template is a lot bigger than the center circle, so what you would have to do is keep sort of shunting it around and just use one part of the edge, but it will help you get a nice curve in there. And when you are done with doing that, you'll end up with something that looks like this. So as you can see, that's the circle, and then we added the short ones, turned it over and added the long ones, and there's the inset of about 10 mil. So this has got a much smaller circle in the middle, and like I said, you can use this. I find using the sort of the template edge on the outside, you can press it down and you can make these curl up really nicely. Just work all the way around, just use a little bit of the template at a time. And you've got that sort of beautiful spread of wild leaves on the back, like that. So that's what you're aiming for. What we're going to do next is you decide which bits of this you actually want to iron. The back of the sunflower is crazy if you look up some pictures, and what I like to do is I like to pull all of these up and iron the sort of the first layer, so not the long ones but the short ones. So iron all of these and then have the long ones still quite sort of chunky and a little bit hairy. And what that creates is this sort of nice transition from these lovely, beautifully ironed petals. And then you've got the nice sort of ironed calyx first layer, and then this sort of quite wild and unruly back bit, which is my nod to this back of a sunflower. like so. So if you want to iron the calyx parts, you can iron the whole thing if you wanted all of these to be neat as well. It's entirely your choice and your vision. I'm not going to do this on camera because it would be very difficult to film, but pull all of these up and iron around. Again, pressure, little wiggle, pressure, little wiggle, and just work all the way around with your iron, holding these bits up out of the way. And once we've done that, we're going to come back and start assembling the head. So I figured I would try and film it, and then if it doesn't come out very well, I can just not include it. So here are the top ones. I'm going to pull all of these up out of the way gently, because you obviously don't want to pull them away from your felting, and then just get the iron, pressure and a bit of a jiggle, pressure and a bit of a jiggle, and I'm just going to work round the whole thing, just pulling these up out of the way. Again, hot iron, good amount of steam. I think the steam might be making my overhead camera have a bit of a fit, but if you can now see, we've got some really nice thin calyx petals, and then we've still got our quite unruly long bits there. So hopefully that came out and I can show you with the iron, but there we go. Right, you should now have your calyx part done, and you're going to need your sunflower head. And I've had to upgrade to my jumbo mat because things are getting a bit on the large side. So flip your sunflower over, and then place your calyx on the back. You just want to spin it around, make sure you've got it in the middle there. Have a look. You can pop a few tacking stabs in the middle, but just to hold it in place. But have a look, make sure you're happy with it. It's in the middle. Yep, quite happy with that. Okay, so like with the ironing, just lift up those middle petals and go in and attach to your sunflower. So we're sort of in there, just pulling these out the way, and they're just going through. And it doesn't matter, obviously, if you get green coming out the front, that's not a problem. You are going to be using a driving technique to attach, so just make sure all your petals are flat. Pull up and then just go around. And what this does is this means that these petals are very sort of freestanding. Just going to go all the way around. Keep turning it. And I'm using my 38 star for this. It's quite a bit of a workhorse. Keep spinning it round until you end up back where you started. So we are moving the petals, the large petals, back. We're not catching these petals, we're just catching that green circle. There we go. So just pulling the petals back. And once you've worked all the way round, just lift it up, grab your circle template again, and you can see this sort of smaller center diameter, and we're just going to use again part of the template. So we're going to go on the inside of the large petals, and you are only using a tiny bit of this template at a time, otherwise you'll go off on a weird kind of angle. But just work around just inside, and what that does, that really pulls up these back long leaves, so they go a bit wild, which if you've seen the back of a sunflower, it is quite it's quite unruly back there. So that's all we're going to do to attach that calyx. There you can see how that's coming along, really starting to take shape now. Grab your brown circle and I'm going to flatten the back a little bit, but that's okay. With your brown circle, you're going to attach it in the middle only. So get your placement exactly where you want it. Make sure you're happy. Turn it, make sure you're happy with it from all angles. Then right in the very centre, you're just going to drive all the way through. So obviously make sure that your petals on the back are all flat and out of the way. So we're attaching right in that centre, and that's making that sort of dip. And I'm just going to go around in the centre just a little bit, just to open up that dip. Like so. Okay, if you have made these little things as the additional extra, then this is the point at which you attach those. If you haven't made them, if you're just going with the straight sunflower center, then what you would do after making your attachment in the center is you'll bring the dome and attach it by catching just underneath like that and taking that through the back. You want a 45-degree angle. You don't want to be going straight down, because otherwise that's going to come out of places on the back that you don't want to see it. So you're catching the underneath, you're going in at a 45-degree angle like that, to attach it. But I've got the other things to show you too. So if you're not attaching these, then just carry on and do what the sort of the 45° all the way round, and that will be that part done for you, and you can skip to the next section. If you're attaching these, then once you've attached the middle, you're going to go round and place them, and again there's 14 of them, so you want to sort of put them all in the gaps of your shaded petals. So by placing all of these little ones, you place them ever so slightly underneath the edge of your brown centre, and then very much like what we did if you were not putting these on, you're just going to catch the end or the very edge, and you're going to drive through the edge of the brown, through your extra petal, and then this will hold all of that into place. And again, a 45° angle. You don't want to be driving out the back outside of where the green. So you've got a good attachment in the middle. And take your time with this. You know, if you feel that you may be going off script a little bit, bring your circle template back in, just give yourself a check. And just go over each one individually. Turn it round. And this is going to attach everything in the middle there and bring it all in together. We've got an escapee there. It's not a problem. Lift the brown, get it back under. Attach it a little bit first maybe. And just work all the way round. You don't want to be getting too much of the brown, so you don't want to be stabbing up here, just catching that end. And keep checking yourself, because it's very easy to put corners in things. Just going to go all the way around. I'm doing this quite quick, but that's just for moving things along. And just give your petals a little tug, just make sure that they're not, that they've been caught up, they haven't been missed. Yeah, fluff up that centre a little bit. A bit more driving through the middle. go back in with your circle. See, my brown's become quite a bit smaller, so I'm just going to pull it back out. It doesn't have to be an exact science. You know, if it's a little bit smaller, it's absolutely fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to butt that up and just go round, make sure that all of those yellows are nice and secure. Fiber's very forgiving, so you can pull it around all over the place. By doing this again, like the back, it just helps these yellow ones just sort of curl up around the middle. And again, I'm not driving all the way through, just the yellows. There we go. So pull it about until you're happy with it. And we've got a nice, the level, top level of the dome should be about 15 mil. We'll go really starting to look like something now. And I like to crumple the flower petals. Probably wait until the end to do it, but I can't help it. I love to scrumple them. Just puts a little bit more of a shape to them. You can really see what's going on. And if you just wanted a sunflower head, you know, for a brooch, or perhaps I think some of these would look gorgeous on curtain tie backs. But that's the head part complete. So if you're just doing the head, then that's where you'd stop. But we're not stopping here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make a couple of leaves, and then we'll wire everything up and finish off with the stem. So to make the leaf, you're going to want 3.5 grams of the green, and there's enough for 2 leaves, and obviously the stem and everything, the calyx, in the green. So you've got enough to make 2. Break it in half. These leaves are so large across that I find that they do need a wire support, and you don't have to wire them. This template does have quite a large wiring hole, but the wiring's entirely optional. With the leaf, sort of half of the wall, start in the tip and get some light adhesion to the surface is fine, but again, we're not driving through. Starting off with a single needle, but this template is wide and open enough that you can use a multi-tool once you've got your initial layer down. Let's get a nice even covering. Don't feel that you have to place it all in one go. You can break it up in bits and just, you know, work your way up the template. That may help you to get a more even coverage. This is a short fibre, so it blends to itself rather nicely. Certainly a little more up in there. There we go. That's the first layer down, so I'm going to flip to a multi-tool. And with multi-tools, I think I say this a lot, if you're on a foam surface, which I do recommend for the templates because you get a nice flat surface, you don't want to use one of those 5-needle impact punches, because the way that it hits the foam is quite devastating to the needles, because there's so many of them in such a small confined space. You can use a brush, although that may be a little too small for this particular template. Also, you can use a felting mat. Those are also quite good. You can use punch tools with those without too much hassle. These tools usually come with 3 needles. I always take one out and have 2, mainly because the third one's always offset. Whereas with these, with 2, you can felt in a straight line. You can get right up to the edge of the template. So let's lift that up, pop it back in. So again, you want it holding its shape, but you don't want it too firm, because we want to be able to attach another layer on top of this. So there we go. So once you've got something that's sort of holding its shape reasonably well, what we'll do now is insert the wire. I'll just get that back in the template. So for this, you're going to want to grab one of the 22 gauge wires that are in the kit. That will be one of the brown wires. So these are the wires, and included in your there should be a digital download, and I'll make a nicer pattern than my one that I've got here. But what you're going to do is take your wire. I actually think these are 20 gauge, not 22 gauge, but they're the brown ones nonetheless. Fold your wire in half and then just bend around the pattern shape, just kind of roughly. It hasn't got to be absolutely exact. Just push it around like that. And then these 2 bits just twist together like that. And the wiring hole in this particular leaf template is quite large. The other leaf templates are fine for a single wire to pass through, but you've got a double one on this. So pop it through, put it in, and you know, you can manipulate it in the template, but we just want something that sort of looks a bit like that. I'm just going to pinch that top a little bit more, just so we've got something to give that sort of width a bit of support. And then we're going to touch it with a few drops of super glue. So that super glue was all dried up, so I'm going to use this one. And you just want a little dot in a few random spots. I'm just going to put a little bit just to hold it in place. Now I'm going to hold it down in the template for a few minutes and let it sort of go off, and then what I'll do is I will leave this completely alone for about 10-15 minutes, really letting this glue dry. Super glue is the quickest way to mess up a needle. If you touch it with your needle when it's still wet, you will coat the needle and the barbs will become pretty useless. So I'm going to leave that to dry, and then we're going to come back and we're going to use the next layer, or the other half of the wool for the next layer. So I have for once waited for the glue to dry completely. So now what we're going to do is take the other half of the green. Remember, it was 3.5 grams in total, I think. And we're going to start working over that base layer. Start at the tip and really get a good point going on. Obviously be mindful now we've got that wire in there, but you know, a good loose grip on the needle will mean that if you hit that wire, you're not going to snap it. Yeah, and again, we're not driving all the way through, sort of penetrating that bottom layer that we've put in, but there we go. I'm working down in sort of smaller increments and filling in, backfilling as I go with this wool. And the nice variegated colour of the green means you're going to get a lovely effect across your leaf. It's not going to be a block of one colour. And we've pulled off a little bit as well to one side so I can go back over and fill. This leaf actually does want to be a little chunky so it can hold its own with the sunflower, because the sunflower is quite huge. And although we will be ironing this leaf, we're not actually going to be pressing it to make it nice and thin. We're just going to be lightly ironing both sides so that the leaf retains its sort of chunky thickness, but that we get that nice smooth surface that the iron gives us. So I'm just going all over. Just carefully around the wiring hole, because obviously you've got to, that's where those wires are meeting. And then actually lift. I can see my wire over here, so I'm going to grab some more of this. And you do want to use up all of this 3.5 grams. That's what's going to give you that nice sort of chunky leaf. I work all over. Just feel around, make sure that you've got a good even thickness across your leaf. I need a little bit more, you can see in here. Always easier to add more. And just use it up, spread it out, put it where you think you need it. You can introduce sort of leaf veins and more intricate details if you wanted to. I just let the colour of the wool you know, sort of do its thing on the leaf, but you can get as creative with this as you like. So there we go, a little bit more to still add in. Just feel around, feel where your wire is a little bit more prominent, so we don't want that coming to the surface. There we go. Almost there. That has a little bit can go in up at the top. So you're going to want to make 2 leaves, exactly the same process for each one. And then we're going to add an extra pipe cleaner on here before we wire up, before we wool wrap. As we're not ironing this as much, do take the time to just give this a good amount of felting. You want this to be quite firm. Okay. So I'm going to try and stop now and Nope, apparently I'm not. Okay, so there is the leaf. You can see that it's quite thick, and that's what we want. Let me get the sunflower in. You can see that, you know, this hasn't been ironed thin. It's not been pressed thin at all. So when you take it out of the template, I just like to go around the edges. Basically, I just like to fiddle. So yeah, a little bit of compression with the hands. Not much, because like I said, we don't want to press it out. There you go, one leaf. Rubbing the surface with your hand will take out any sort of pit holes that you've made with your needle. The flip side is that it does fluff it up a bit, but we're going to be ironing it, so there we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is attach the pipe cleaner. Actually, no, sorry, I do apologise. We're not going to be adding pipe cleaner yet. We're going to lightly iron this, and then we're going to add the pipe cleaner and wool wrap the little bit of the stem. So I've got my 2 leaves, and hopefully this will work, but again, good hot steamy iron, but I'm not putting any pressure on it. I'm just letting the iron glide over the surface, both sides. And that's really all that you want with that, is just to let the iron glide. So that way you're going to keep this nice thick sort of chunkiness to it. I will go around and trim it with the scissors just to take off the, you know, these sort of really fluffy bits. So again, just almost just using nothing more than the weight of the iron, just rubbing it over the surface, just to kind of seal in those fibres and make a really nice surface. Once you've ironed your leaf very lightly, I'm just going to come in with a pair of scissors and trim just the really fluffy bits on the edge. And then you can go back over it with an iron if you want to, just a little bit, but I tend to find that works just enough. So there we go, a nice crisp leaf shape, and you can feel the wire in there. You've got a good sort of support on it now, so you know we can do some leaf curly things. But what we now need to do is extend this wire a little bit, so that when we come to join it to the main stem, we've got enough for it to join with. For that, you're going to need one of your pipe cleaners, and bend it in half. Grab your wire cutters and give it a snip. Then what I tend to do is just give probably about 20 mil, give or take, yeah, 20 mil up into the leaf, wrap down to the end of the wire, then take this, bring it back down and wrap it on the cross. So let me show you that once more. So about 20mm up into the leaf, wrap this down the wires that are there, and then bring this down and wrap it the other way. So this will come down that way, and I find that this just helps kind of hold that pipe cleaner really well. There we go. What we're going to do now is wrap, that's where the brown wire is, and we're going to wrap this part just a little bit past it in the green wool. So pull yourself off a bit. It's probably about 0.25 of a gram. Let me just check. Yep, 0.25. And make it sort of elongated. And because these are short fibres, I just a few stabs up and turn it, a few stabs up and turn it. It just knits those short fibres together so you've got a longer piece to wrap. And to wrap this, what I do is just have a little bit of a tuft overlapping the what will be the underside of your leaf. Wrap it around and lock it over itself, so that holds it really nicely in place. And then wrap flat, and you want to make sure that you wrap flat. You don't want to just hold and wrap, because what happens is this gets twisted. So keep it flat and wrap it all the way down until you're just into the pipe cleaner. And then a few stabs just to hold it in place. This will all get incorporated into the main part of the stem, so there will be more wrapped over this. And then this tuft, just spread it out over the leaf, and that will blend out very nicely into what you've already got there. Let's check both sides. We have it. So that's the leaf now sort of wired and wooled, and you're going to do that for both of your leaves. And now what we're going to do is put in sort of the main structure wires to bring everything together. To begin wiring up, you're going to need the 18 gauge wire, which is the green one that's in your kit, and then you're going to need 2 of the 20 gauge wires, which are the brown ones. And I'm going to turn back, I'll start with one of the 20 gauge wires, and I'm going to turn back about 7 centimeters and just create a bit of a loop. I think that's about 7, it's about 6, 7, and just create a U-bend in the top there, like that. And this is going to be the start of the wire. This is going to go through the head of the sunflower. So grab your sunflower head, and what we are going to do is this wire is going to go through the sunflower head like that, and it's going to catch on that loop, on that hook. You may find an awl is useful, and what we're going to do is put 2 holes quite close together. So with your foam mat underneath, drive your awl all the way through. You want it coming out the other side. And you do want to make a good sized hole for this. You can see there, the hole, little blue hole in the background there. And then pop your wire straight down through. And have a look where you need to place another hole. And you want this to be quite a wide loop at the top. You don't want it narrow. So I need to put another hole just there. I'm just going to push it all the way through. Get a good sized hole. And then this will come out the back. Pull everything right down to the end of that loop. Excuse me. And cross these over and twist all the way down the rest of that wire. So there you have it. And this loop is going to mean that you've got that sort of nice, you can create that sort of nice sort of bobbing effect on the head. You know, it's not very rigidly wired. Okay, so we've got the head attached. Now what we're going, this is where it starts getting really big. You can, depending on how big you want this, you can just wrap this wire, the 20 gauge, around the 18 gauge all the way down, and it will be about 30 centimeters, I believe. If you want it even longer, then offset it ever so slightly by bringing the 18 gauge from the top, just bring it down, then wrap this 20 gauge around the 18, it's not very tightly wrapped. Second, so I'm just leveling up the 18 gauge just there, and then wrap the 20 all the way down the 18. And you'll have, yes, all this bit at the bottom. You're going to grab your other 20 gauge and start wrapping that at about the same point. So that's where the first 20 gauge ends. So I'm just going to take that up a little bit and continue wrapping around the 18. Now with this sort of overlapping the wires, you could, I wouldn't say carry on ad infinitum, but around an 18 gauge support you can actually get it quite long. You can always add in more wires, that's always an option. So I've now got down to the end of the 18 gauge wire, and all I'm going to do is come off very slightly. I'm going to turn this back, and then I'm going to carry on wrapping it back up the stem again. So you can make this, yeah, as strong as you like. You could add in another 20 gauge over the top. There's all kinds of things you can do. What we're going to do is we're going to strengthen this now with pipe cleaners. And the pipe cleaners are, we're going to wrap 2, maybe 3 pipe cleaners from top to bottom. And it's at this point that we're going to bring in our leaves. So you have 2 leaves, or you may only have 1. It's entirely up to you. And you're going to decide where, in relation to the flower head, you want these leaves. Place them about where you want them. Let's move this out of the way. You'll probably need to do this vertically. If I hold this up vertically on camera, you won't see anything. So I'm going to do my best to guess. Now we've got this thick bit here, which is where that main supporting wire is, and then it comes off in a pipe cleaner. So I'm going to make just a very small bend just at the end of those thick wires. Hold that against the stem, and then just wrap that pipe cleaner all the way down till it gets to the end. And that's where my first leaf is going to be. Then I want a second leaf, I don't know, slightly higher or lower. I'm just going to take this off camera very quickly. Okay, so I had to hold it vertically. So again, second leaf, find the end of where the thick wires are. Just give it a 90-degree bend. Hold it in place of where you think you might want it. And then wrap the pipe cleaner to hold it in place. This part is incredibly fiddly because we're dealing with something that is quite long. So that's kind of what it's going to look like. Take another pipe cleaner, and what we're going to do now is wrap all the way down from top to bottom. I'm going to try and do this on camera as best I can, but you want to wrap these pipe cleaners quite tightly. So don't space out the wrap like this. You want to wrap very close together. You'll have more room, so you'll probably be able to do this a lot easier. Just wrap it all the way down. It's probably going to take about 3 pipe cleaners, I think, to get all the way to the bottom. So when you get to your first leaf, you can add in a little bit of strength on that sort of joint. So I'm coming around, I'm going to go under the leaf, I'm going to come back over the leaf and down the other side. So I'm going to do that again. Let's hold this leaf. Wrap it under the leaf, come around, so around, and cross it over, and then carry on wrapping. There we go, that's the first one. Another pipe cleaner. These pipe cleaners also help to sort of bulk out the stem a little bit, because we don't want a thin stem on a flower this size, it just wouldn't look right. So I'm going to wrap again. So I'm going to get to the leaf, I'm going to come across, back up, round, just strengthen it up. There's no wrong way of doing it, just wrap it around a little bit, but don't wrap too many times, because you don't want it to have a very thick joint. Yeah, almost down to the second pipe cleaner. Use your pipe cleaner as well to sort of secure in any pointy ends. We don't want anything sticking out. We might need another half of a pipe cleaner to finish this off, so I'm just going to overlap again. We can just wind all the way down now. Very tightly, and use 3 pipe cleaners. So I'm going to grab my pliers and just squeeze on that, and so it's nice and tight. At the end, just come down and go back up a little bit. That way it will tuck in that pointy end. So hopefully most of that stayed on camera. I'll probably find that I was sort of over here somewhere. But that's what you're aiming for, is a nice tight weave top to bottom. And then hold up your sunflower and just hold it by the end, let it bounce, see if you're happy with the support. If you're not, add in some more wire. You know, the floristry wires are going to give you more strength than pipe cleaners, but pipe cleaners are a good binder. Okay, what we're going to do now is wrap this main stem with floristry tape. Possibly the only thing more tricky than wrapping the pipe cleaner on film is going to be wrapping floristry tape, but we're going to give it a go. What we're going to do is wrap from end to end in floristry tape, and you're going to do this whether or not you're going to wall wrap or just have floristry tape. The when the tape's activated, as many of you know, floristry tape isn't sticky, but it does stick to itself. There is a slight tackiness to it, and by wrapping the stem with floristry tape, even if you're going to wall wrap, it gives you a little bit of extra kind of tacky adhesion for when you're wrapping. So even if you're going to wall wrap your stem, I do recommend doing this part. You've got lots of floristry tape so I would probably just break it in half to start with. Work with manageable bits. You can work in small bits, it will overlap and stick to itself. Grab one end and pull, and it makes that sort of squeaky noise, and you can feel that the surface is a bit tacky. To get yourself started, hold your tape up at the tip, bring it round, and then wrap it over itself so it kind of grabs itself and it locks in place. And then wrapping flat like you would with wool, just wrap your stem overlapping where you wrapped previously. So we're going to come round and sort of overlap there. If you want, you can use tape to sort of bulk out the stem a little bit. So if you were just going to wrap with floristry tape but you wanted to make it a bit thicker, you can always, you know, wrap a few more layers. You want to keep some good tension on it. It will squish down your pipe cleaner, but I am going to wool wrap this, which will bulk it back out again. And, you know, just keep going all the way down. I'm going to pull that leaf down out of the way until I get to its junction point. So there, I'm going to bring it down to where the leaf is, bring it around underneath, and then just carry on wrapping. It doesn't have to be exact or perfect. See if I can get this done a little bit quicker. It's a little less to handle once you start getting down the stem. So okay, so what I've noticed is that I have this leaf is a bit floppy down here, and that's because the thick wires that are supporting this are stopping here, and it's just the pipe cleaner that's forming a bridge. So I'm just going to snap that off. And what I'm going to do is just find the end of the pipe cleaner that I wrapped down here. So I'm going to remove the pipe cleaners just back up to here, and then I'm going to rewrap. I won't do that on camera, I'll just strip it off to one side, and then I'll come back and show you how I rewrap. Okay, so what I've done real quickly is I just wound the last pipe cleaner back down out of the way, and now I'm unwinding this one so that I can just get it out the way of the leaf. And then the leaf is obviously this one here. So I'm just going to take it off. It's kind of useful when things do go wrong in the tutorial, because I can show you what I do. So there we go. There's the leaf and there's my wire. And what's happened is you need a little bit of that joint wire to, you know, kind of support it off of the main stem. And what had happened was I was off the end of that, so it was flopping about. So I'm going to put my leaf back on the opposite side of the other one. Then I'm going to wrap I can feel that sort of joint wire clamping around the main stem now. So wrap that down. I think what had happened is, as I was fiddling about with it, this had sort of spun round the main centre. So I'm just going to wrap this one back down all the way. And then take this one back up to meet it. And there we go, all sorted. And that's now, you know, not flopping about. Okay, so moving on back to the florist tape. So if you've broken the florist tape and you need to sort of start a new bit, just overlap the previous bit round, lock it on itself, and then again carry on. Just work your way down. Almost that. Just going to have another bit. So overlap the previous bit, lock it on itself, and then wrap it all the way down to the end. And when you get to the end, you can sort of come past the end ever so slightly, bring it round, and then angle it back up. So as you come round, angle it back up and squish. That should give you a nice end. So this is what we've got now, is wrapped end to end. If I'm wool wrapping, so I don't mind these sort of gaps in it. If you were just going to wrap with floristry tape and that was going to be the end of it, then you'd want to pay a bit more attention around the junctions and joins to make sure that you incorporate everything. It's not so imperative for me because I'm now going to wool wrap this from end to end. It's going to take probably about 3 grams, I think, of wool to wrap, but we're going to do it in sort of sections. So you're going to need some more of your green wool and your felting surface. So if you, like me, are going to wool wrap your stem, then you're going to need more of your green. And the first thing that we're going to do is create the kind of slopey trumpet bit that sort of goes from a small stem to the head. I mean, this, you know, doesn't look aesthetically correct. So even if you're just florist taping your wire, then you still want to do this sort of bridge trumpet part. And how we're going to do that on camera, I have no idea. So we'll see how we get on. I've got a bit, and we're going to wrap around and build up so we kind of make sort of a cone shape. I'm going to join these together a bit with some tacking stabs because they are short fibre and I want them to stand up to being pulled slightly as I'm wrapping. So okay, what we're going to do, I'm going to do my best to try and keep everything out the way so you can see, is I'm just going to start by wrapping around the very bottom. And we're going to overlap it several times so that we start to get a build up. And what I'm doing is I'm actually working my way down. So as I'm wrapping, I'm bringing it further down so that it's coming out. So I'm not wrapping up here, I'm bringing it down and wrapping it around the bottom. And as you can see, I'm starting to get that sort of bulge. Grab a felting needle and just felt around. Let's bend that out of the way a minute. That's better, you can see a little better now. So we're just building up kind of a cone shape. I'm going to grab a little bit more. And again, those sort of joining stabs mean that you can, put a little bit of pull on these fibres and they, won't come apart because they're short. So I'm going to go back in around the bottom. Really build up. Like so. And I'm pointing my needle in towards the center stem as I'm working around. So that's the way that I want the fibres to go. I want them to compact. Then get around the bottom and really secure it to the calyx on the back. So what you're going to end up with is this kind of cone shape. And from that, we'll now wrap the rest of the stem. Let's just move my other needle out of the way. Take it slow. You'll have a lot more room to, wrap and everything. So hopefully this will be a lot easier for you than it is for me. Make yourself some longer pieces. And then overlap. Yeah, attach it to the previous part. And then wrap. And it's at this point you decide how thick you want this stem. So, I mean, you don't want it super chunky, but you definitely want to bulk it out. Now I'm going to be waxing my stem because I am a sucker for punishment, apparently. I do like the wax stems. I think they look very realistic. It also really does kind of solidify all of the fibres, so there's no fluffy bits. But as you wrap, just go over with your needle. Find a place, don't sort of jump about stabbing because you're just going to hit this wire, but just find a spot, back and forth in the same spot, and then that'll help the fibres just sort of stay in place. And it is just a case of rinse and repeat this all the way down the stem. Make yourself a length of fibre. Overlap where it was previously and continue wrapping down. And then when you get to a junction with a leaf, you know, you can split the hairs and go either side. You know, it's just bringing it all in. So I've split them, gone round either side, brought them back together again, carried on wrapping, and then just finding a few places to stab those fibres, keeping them in place. Got a little bit of white pipe cleaner there, so pull off a little bit, make a thin strip, and then just wrap. Again, split them maybe, bring them underneath, wrap over the top and keep going. And there are no hard and fast rules as to how you should do this. It's just perseverance and working your way down the entire stem. If your stem is a little uneven, it's absolutely fine. Especially if you're waxing it, the wax is really going to tidy up a lot. If you're needle felting the stem, then you'll just want to spend some time going over it. You may try ironing it. I don't honestly know how that would fare. It does make the surfaces quite smooth, so that might work. I might try ironing a stem at some point. So the boring bit, I'm afraid, just working all the way down the stem. So do feel free to fast forward me if you're so inclined. You may have a much shorter stem, so I always do try to do the, you know, the most work of all of the pieces, so that you can see, you know, what I'm doing. But you may have one leaf and a much shorter stem. You may just have made the head. So I'm going to wrap. Just attach these fibres to the previous bit. I love short fibred sort of bats and things, but for wrapping they are not fun. But there we go. I'm just going to carry on down using the wool to bulk out my stem. I'm at another junction, so I'm going to come round. I think my next project is going to be a small one. The last thing I think I filmed before this was the bluebell, and that was huge as well. So something small next, I think. There is a side project, while I remember, just to break up the monotony. I will mention it again at the end, but there is a side project that you can make using this template set, and let me get you a little sneaky peek. I think here it is. How about this? Look at this, sort of an oriental type flower. The stamen isn't actually stuck in yet. I'm still working out the design of that one, but this will be coming as a little optional extra tutorial if I ever get to the end of of this stem. So we are nearly there, but I love finding new things to do with the template sets that I've already created, and that oriental flower you make using this set. So, and it's very simple. So that will be coming on the YouTube channel. Gosh, I think this has to be the longest stem ever. Okay. I will rough out the last little bit and then probably go back and just tidy it up off camera. But I'm just going to wrap. And then one last bit should do it. I do generally film everything that I can, and that way, you know, you can fast forward me. Okay. And we're there. So just very quickly, very roughly. So what I'm now going to do is just go up and down the stem a couple of times, just knitting these fibres together like this, and work it over some more, just so that they're all, you know, really there. And then I'm going to pop on the wax melter and melt some felter's wax in the natural so that we can start waxing the stem. So for those of you who are not going to wax stems, you just want to keep working the stem with your wool. Real shallow angle with your needle all over the surface. You know, work it sort of needle pointing this way then turn the thing over and have the needle pointing down, so you're really working those fibres in. Get yourself a bit of compression, roll it in your hands, you know, pull the leaves so they're out of the way, roll it, and you'll end up with a reasonable stem just from felting. So I'm going to carry on and wax the stem. So for that I'm going to lay down some greaseproof paper, because I generally make a huge mess with the felter's wax. So you're also going to need some, if you're going to wax these, and what I recommend is that you use some kitchen foil to protect the leaves and things. So I'm going to grab that and show you how to cover this up, ready for waxing. Okay, so I've got some foil, and what I'm going to do with this is wrap up the leaves, sort of parcel them in like little envelopes of foil up to about here, so as we're waxing the stem, if we do get any drips, it's not going to ruin our lovely leaves. And I'm also going to just balloon the head in some foil as well, so that we will be taking the wax up you know, to this sort of cone shape part, but we'll do that right at the end, sort of a bit more controlled than when we're waxing just the stems. So I apologise for the foily noise that is about to ensue. I've got a huge piece of foil here with a slit cut in it, and what I'm going to do is just bring that up to the top, and parcel it up. Just like that. And then pop another one. And that's going to protect all of those lovely petals. Want to make sure that this is right up to the base, like so. And then I'm going to parcel up each of the leaves. So just fold them over, pinch them up at the bottom, there we go. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be protective. There, and that's the main parts of our flower protected. So I'm going to melt the felter's wax and put down a covering of greaseproof paper so that it doesn't get over my grid mat here. Okay, I've opted to take my foil off of the flower head, simply because the sheer amount of noise that it will make as I'm moving the whole thing around. So pull your leaves down away from the head. I'm going to start at the head and work my way down. You're going to need, this is an artist's paint scrapery mixer. I can't remember the name of it, thingy, and I find this very useful for scooping out the wax and applying it in relatively small but large enough amounts. Okay, the cone shape at the back, we're going to wire the stem, and then we just kind of want the wax to go up into that cone shape just a little bit, and that's going to form sort of a blend out between it being fluffy and wool to it being waxed. But we don't start up here, we start down here and we work backwards just a little bit. So if anybody has seen me work with Felter's wax before, they'll know that I tend to make an epic mess with this, and I'm sure today will be no different. So what I'm going to do is just scoop out some of this wax and apply it to the stem. This is going to be quite a lengthy process. It's quite rewarding because it looks very realistic, but given the confines that I'm working in, I'm going to have to do this very slowly. So what I might do is film the whole thing, but then speed bits of it up. But what we do is we apply some wax to the area, and then we're going to spread some wax back up into that sort of cone shape. And don't worry about it going white and messy. So I'm just taking it up a little bit into that cone shape. Turn it round, a few drops, just brush it back. And that's about where we want it. Then we get to do the really messy bit that I love. Obviously the wax is hot, so if you apply it and touch it straight away, it is going to be very hot, but I'm going to rub it in with my fingers. Like this. And the wax absorbs into the wool, and you get this lovely finish to it. And again, don't worry about these sort of waxy white bits at the moment. I'm just going to work in increments down the stem, applying a little bit of the wax and some on the underside. Waiting a few seconds, and I'm using sort of a pinch and twist. And if you've not worked with Felter's wax before, just, wrap some wool around some wire and pipe cleaners, and just have a play with it before you use it on your project. I mean, it's very simple to use, but you might want to sort of get a feel for it. I usually get the feel for it when it burns my hand. Some of my wax is still melting, so a few drops. A little tap on the underside. We just work it into the wool. And it's really quite malleable when it's at the warm stage, and it will stay malleable for quite some time. Hand heat will sort of warm it back up again. So I'm just going to rearrange myself a little bit so that I'm not hitting my other camera with the foil leaves. Okay, so a little bit of a rearrangement. Got myself a little bit more working space. And I'm just going to add a few drops on either side. And then pinch and roll. There, you can see that this is starting to wax up very nicely. I do feel it brings something to the stems. They really do look quite realistic when they're waxed. Now you can wax up these leaf stems if you want. I don't. But it's obviously optional. Sometimes you can use the wax and it looks such a mess, but you just keep working it, and you know, it really does kind of calm down. So just work it round, turn it over, work the other side. And you can go in with your little spatula, apply some more if it needs some right in those joints. One thing to be mindful of, I think, is that if you are going to wax these parts, any movement that you then sort of put into the leaf, you may run the risk of cracking the wax. So that's why I will sort of wax up to the joint, but not down into the leaf. A bit more. I'm whizzing through this as fast as I can, but I want to make sure that I get a good coverage. Just pop any bits back in for remelting. You can do what I'm doing right now with just plain beeswax. It doesn't act quite the same way. There's not quite so much elasticity in beeswax than there is in the felter's wax. But if you've got some to hand and you just want to have a play, it's certainly worth using some beeswax to try out. This is the natural beeswax that I'm applying to the stem. We also do it in pink and black, but you can dye the natural felter's wax with any beeswax dye, will work. Right, I think that's the two tricky bits done. Make sure that stays wrapped up. Once you get on the home straight, it goes a bit quicker. Nearly that. There, that's pretty much done. If you get all the way down to the end, this has brought some of the wool off the end there, but that's not a problem because all I will do is snip that off and just touch a bit of wax to the bottom just to seal that end. See how wonderfully quick you can do it when there aren't leaves to dodge. But there we go. That's done. Now, as you can see, there are some sort of white waxy bits where the wax is sort of built up and sat on the surface. And what I'm going to do now is just apply some heat. You can do that with a hairdryer, any kind of heat source. Variable is good, hairdryer on a low setting, and then just bring it closer, bring it closer, bring it closer until it just starts warming up the surface. You can use heat guns. They may be a little aggressive, so again, start very far away. So I'm going to clear this and get set up ready with my hot air gun so I can show you, because this is a little bit too much of a build up. We want it to come, we want the wool colour to come right through. I've grabbed my, it's a desoldering air gun, and I found that it's actually really useful because it's an adjustable temperature setting, so I can actually put it quite low. You can use, like I said, any kind of heat source that will blow, you know, warm to hot air. Even your hands, to a degree, where you've just got a little bit of wax build-up, you can just warm it up in your hands. Just give it a roll and a rub, and you can distribute the wax a little. But where you've got some larger build-up, you're going to need a heat source. So I'm going to grab my little hot air gun, and I'm just going to rub it so we can get a focus. There we go, I can focus on this bit. And as you can see, it just melts, remelts the wax in situ. And as the wax melts, it will absorb into the wool. So you want to melt it so that you don't have the white, but you obviously don't want it to sink all into the wool, so you're left with a fluffy outside again. So just a little bit of a application of the hot air. Just enough to make those white nodules, or most of them, disappear. And then if you've got a particularly stubborn, a little bit like I've got here, once it's melted, just scrape it off, and like here, just go in, scrape it off, rub it in with your hands. And it will, as you can see, give you this gorgeous sort of flower stem texture. So I'm just going to finish up on the main part of the stem. And then we will turn our attention to this cone at the top. Got quite a bit of a build up there, so just scrape that out. Go, rub it over with my hands. Just rub that in. Okay. So I'm going to pull my leaves back down out of the way again, and I'm going to pull all of my petals and my calyx up out this way, and then I'm going to apply some heat and just gently smooth it out and blend it out. And turn it. And a nice little bit. And there we go. So that's now a completely waxed stem, and you can feel the wax sort of gets softer as it goes up into this part. There we have it. So I'm going to clear this, take the foil packets off of the leaves once all the wax is out the way, and then we're pretty much done. We just need some finishing scrunches. So there we go, the home stretch. The stem's waxed, the leaves are on, and all we need now do is just make some finishing touches by curling the leaves, bring the head over so you've got that sort of angle. So the sunflower's looking right at you. And don't forget to scrumple. I love scrumpling these. They go all kind of over the place. There you have it. That's the sunflower done. And what a project. The overall size of this thing is big, and let's see, what are we? That's about 50, so it's over 38 centimeters long, Obviously you can do them shorter, pop them in a terracotta pot. You know, there's so many things that you can do with this. And for those of you that stuck with me during the boring bit, there is this extra little project which I will be putting on YouTube very soon. This is made from the Calyx. So you make a calyx exactly the same way as we did for this. And then there's a way that you sort of roll it and fold it, and you end up with this gorgeous kind of oriental looking flower. And as I mentioned before, I'm currently working on the stamens for it. But so this will be a bonus little tutorial that will be coming on the YouTube channel in you know, the next sort of few days or whatever, as soon as I get a chance to film that and put that up. So there you have it. There's the sunflower. I thank you very much for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. This has been a while in the making, as I said before, but it's done, and I look forward to seeing what some of you are going to do with this. It's such a beautiful flower to head into summer. So thank you very much for sticking with me. Do feel free to send me your pictures, and I wish you all a very crafty day.